It's said that our childhood memories hide secrets, but when I found that old crinkled drawing at the bottom of a dusty box, I didn't expect my entire life to change. The paper was marked by time, edges yellowed. On it were doodles of me, laughing with my friends at the park. But my smile faded as I noticed the tall, faceless figure drawn in the background. A cold chill raced up my spine. That wasn't something I remembered drawing. "Why is he there?" I muttered to myself. "You found it, didn't you?" My neighbor, Mrs. Mavis, stood at the doorway, her cloudy eyes filled with concern. Rumors said she was a psychic. The way she spoke made me think those rumors might be true. How did you know?" Mrs. Mavis took a step inside, her gaze fixed on the drawing. "That park. I've felt its energy for years. And the boy in the drawing beside you, Danny, wasn't it?" I swallowed hard, memories flooding back. Danny disappeared at that park. We never found out what happened. Mrs. Mavis touched my arm lightly. "Sometimes things from our past come back, Alex, but not always in ways we expect." She glanced at the faceless figure, "And sometimes they come back for a reason." There was so much I didn't understand. Why couldn't I remember drawing that figure? And why did seeing it make my heart race with a mix of fear and guilt? I thought of the countless hours Danny and I had spent together, of the secrets we shared, of the treehouse we built. The weight of losing him all those years ago bore down on me again. "Why is this happening now?" I whispered. Mrs. Mavis, her expression grave, simply said, "There's a balance in the universe. When it's disrupted, it demands to be fixed. That drawing, Alex, it's a call to action." I looked down at the sketch, the faceless figure seeming to watch me. Mrs. Mavis's words hung in the air, thick with foreboding. The mystery of Danny's disappearance, the sinister figure in my childhood drawing, and the unknown journey ahead loomed ominously before me. And so, with an old drawing and a heart full of unresolved emotions, my quest for answers began. Little did I know the dangers that lay ahead, or the price I might have to pay. The night following the discovery was the beginning of my nightmares. I was back in the park, the laughter of my younger self echoing eerily. With every dream, that tall, faceless figure edged closer, and the atmosphere grew colder. Waking up with a start one morning, I found strange, dark markings on my arms, looking almost like the twisted branches of a dead tree. Panic set in. What were they? How did they get there? I went to see Mrs. Mavis, hoping she'd have answers. She opened her door before I even knocked, her expression serious. "You've begun to dream about him, haven't you?" she inquired without preamble. I rolled up my sleeves, showing her the markings. Her face paled. "These are the marks of the Slender Man," she whispered. "Slender Man?" The name sent chills down my spine. She nodded gravely. "A creature from folklore known to stalk and take children. Legends say he's drawn to unresolved emotions and guilt." I recalled the drawing, the memories of Danny, and the figure that haunted my dreams. "Why is he after me? What does he want?" Mrs. Mavis sighed, choosing her words carefully. "The Slenderman is a complex being. Some say he's merely a myth, while others believe he's as real as you and I. But all stories agree on one thing: his obsession with those he targets." The realization struck me hard. Was Danny one of his victims? Feeling desperate, I spent hours researching the Slender Man. Stories and accounts from others who had encountered him filled my screen. Many described a similar pattern: dreams, markings, and then a final confrontation. As days turned into nights and my dreams intensified, I started seeing fleeting shadows even when awake. A silhouette at the window, a rustling in the trees, a whisper in the wind. Paranoia gripped me. Was it him, or just my imagination? Feeling increasingly isolated, I was glad for Mrs. Mavis's presence. Over cups of tea, we'd discuss legends, trying to find a way to end my torment. But while she was knowledgeable, even she seemed fearful of what lay ahead. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows on the street, she leaned in close. "Alex, the next step is returning to the park. Confront your past before it consumes your future." The thought terrified me, but deep down, I knew she was right. My path was set. I would face this sinister being and find out the truth about Danny, no matter the cost. As I approached the entrance to the park, it felt alien, far from the playground of my memories. Overgrown trees, wild shrubs, and the eerie silence replaced the joyful sounds of children playing. The path that led to our old treehouse seemed to beckon, inviting me to the heart of the darkness. Taking a deep breath, I ventured in. With every step, a heavy sensation of being watched settled over me. The once familiar trails now felt like a twisted maze. Cryptic symbols, resembling the marks on my arm, were etched onto the trees. The Slenderman's presence was palpable. After what felt like hours, I stumbled upon our old treehouse. The wood was rotting, the ladder almost falling apart. I climbed up, each step creaking under my weight. Inside, the remnants of our childhood were strewn everywhere. But what caught my attention was a stack of papers in the corner. I picked them up. They were more drawings, eerily similar to mine. Except these were filled with frantic notes and sketches of the Slender Man, each more terrifying than the last. The most recent ones bore Danny's signature. My heart raced. These were his last messages, cries for help. As I leafed through the pages, a sudden rustling outside the treehouse grabbed my attention. I cautiously peered out of the window. The tall, slender silhouette stood at the base of the tree, its faceless head tilting upward, seemingly staring right at me. Panicking, I scrambled to find an exit. The notes from Danny mentioned a secret escape hatch we'd built as kids. My fingers finally found the latch, and I descended hastily, my heart pounding loudly. Running through the forest, the darkness seemed to close in on me. Every shadow resembled the Slender Man. Every rustle felt like his footsteps. I ran until I reached Mrs. Mavis's house, gasping for breath. She opened the door, her eyes widening at my terrified state. "You saw him, didn't you?" I nodded, showing her Danny's notes. He was there, right below the treehouse, and Danny, he knew about the Slenderman. Mrs. Mavis took a deep breath. "We have to decipher these notes, Alex. They might have clues on how to protect you." As we sat down, poring over the scribbled pages, one thing became clear. This was far from over. The Slenderman was real, and he was after me. But with Danny's notes and Mrs. Mavis by my side, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could confront this nightmare and find closure for both Danny and myself. Late one night, as rain pelted against the window and thunder rumbled, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. Hesitantly, I picked up. A distorted voice whispered, echoing with static, "Stop looking, Alex." "Danny, is that you?" I responded, hope and fear warring inside me. The line went dead. But what followed were irregular, haunting texts, fragments of memories, lyrics of songs we sang, and then a chilling message: "He's coming." I rushed to Mrs. Mavis, the messages burning a hole in my pocket. "It's Danny," I said, showing her the texts. "He's trying to warn me." She looked troubled. "The Slender Man is toying with you, using Danny's memories to trap you. You must stay vigilant." Over the next few days, time seemed to blur. There were moments when I'd black out and wake up in unfamiliar places. The park, outside the treehouse, or near the very spot Danny had vanished. Every time, the dark markings on my arms grew more pronounced. The emotional strain was becoming unbearable. Why was this happening? Was it my guilt, my unresolved feelings about Danny's disappearance that attracted this entity? Seeking answers, Mrs. Mavis and I delved deeper into Danny's notes. Among the frantic sketches and warnings, we found mention of a ritual, one that could summon the Slender Man, perhaps to control or even banish him. "Alex, this is dangerous," Mrs. Mavis cautioned. "Confronting him directly might have consequences we can't foresee." But desperation clouded my judgment. I need to end this, for Danny, for me. We gathered the necessary items: the childhood drawing, a locket Danny always wore, and a candle made of black wax. At the stroke of midnight, in the center of my living room, we began the ritual. As the black candle's flame flickered, shadows danced across the walls. An icy wind blew, extinguishing the light. In the oppressive darkness, a voice echoed, neither mine nor Mrs. Mavis's. "You called?" Fear paralyzed me. The looming presence of the Slender Man was unmistakable. Yet, amidst the terror, there was a familiar warmth. "Danny?" Suddenly the lights flickered back on. The room was empty save for the burnt-out candle and the drawing, which now depicted the Slender Man even closer to my childhood self. Mrs. Mavis, pale and shaken, whispered, "It's clear now. He's bound to you, to Danny, and to this unresolved past. But the key to breaking free lies in understanding the bond. We must delve deeper." The weight of my decisions, the terror of the Slenderman's pursuit, and the haunting echoes of Danny's voice left me on the brink of despair. But I knew one thing: I couldn't face this alone. The memories once tucked away in the recesses of my mind began to surface with greater clarity. Flashes of the last day I saw Danny, moments before his disappearance, played out like an old movie reel. A playful chase, a dare to venture deeper into the forest, and then a scream. Mrs. Mavis sensed the shifting energy around me. Your memories, Alex, they're the key. In her dimly lit room, she set up an elaborate circle with various symbols and crystals, preparing for a memory dive. This will help you navigate the depths of your memories, but be careful, it can be overwhelming. Hesitating for a moment, I then nodded. It was time to uncover the truth. As the ritual commenced, a familiar lightheadedness washed over me. I was transported back to that fateful day, watching my younger self and Danny. I followed as we ventured deeper into the forest, our laughter echoing. Then, as the memory unfolded, a detail emerged that I had suppressed. A third figure standing at a distance, tall and faceless, the Slender Man. In the memory, Danny saw him first. "Who is that?" he whispered, terror evident in his eyes. Before I could respond, the Slenderman advanced, his elongated arms reaching for us. Panicking, I ran, leaving Danny behind. His scream pierced the air as I fled. The guilt hit me like a tidal wave, pulling me out of the memory and back to Mrs. Mavis's room. Tears streamed down my face. "I left him," I choked out. "It's my fault he was taken." Mrs. Mavis's comforting hand rested on my shoulder. "You were just a child, scared and overwhelmed. But now, you have a chance to make it right. That's why he's after me," I realized. "The Slender Man is drawn to my guilt, my unresolved feelings." "Yes," she said, "but confronting your guilt, accepting it, and seeking to right your wrongs can break his hold." I knew what I had to do. It wasn't just about escaping the Slenderman's grasp anymore. It was about saving Danny, even if it meant confronting my darkest fears. "We're going back to the park," I said, determination clear in my voice. "I'm going to face the Slender Man and bring Danny back." Mrs. Mavis nodded, pride and concern evident in her eyes. "Remember, it's not just about the confrontation. It's about reconciliation. Reconcile with your past, with Danny, and with yourself." As we prepared for the final confrontation, I felt a mix of dread and hope. I was ready to face my past and confront the Slender Man, not as the scared child I once was, but as someone seeking redemption. The cold wind blew through the trees as we approached the park's entrance. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. This was where it all began, and where it would all end. Mrs. Mavis and I had prepared a ritual circle in the heart of the forest, near the treehouse. "Remember, facing him is just the first step," she reminded me. "You must also confront your own emotions, the guilt and fear, and finally offer him reconciliation." As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, the Slender Man's familiar oppressive aura grew stronger. I stepped into the circle, clutching the drawing of my childhood self and Danny, and lit the black candle. The world around me dimmed, leaving just the flickering candlelight. Shadows danced, elongating and morphing until they took his form. The Slenderman emerged from the darkness, his towering figure looming over the circle. But beside him, a fainter, shimmering figure appeared. "Danny. Danny." My voice broke. The shimmering figure, a mere echo of my best friend, glanced my way, sadness evident even in his ethereal form. The Slender Man seemed to feed off my emotions, growing taller, his tendrils creeping closer to the protective circle. Gathering courage, I spoke. "I know why you're here. I left Danny. I ran. But I'm here now, facing my past, facing you." Danny's apparition stepped closer, the bond between us pulling him forward. "Alex," he whispered, his voice distant but filled with emotion. "It wasn't your fault." Tears welled up as memories flooded back, the good and the bad. The Slender Man's tendrils reached for Danny, trying to pull him back into the darkness. "No!" I shouted, my determination flaring. "I won't let you take him again." Holding up the drawing, I focused on our shared memories, the love, the friendship, and the bond that was never truly broken. A brilliant light emanated from the paper, pushing the Slender Man back. As the light touched Danny, his form became more tangible, more real. The Slender Man recoiled, his form dissolving, retreating back into the shadows from whence he came. The night's stillness was broken by a soft thud. There, lying in the grass where the apparition had been, was Danny, no longer a mere echo, but real and alive. Mrs. Mavis approached, astonishment in her eyes. "You did it, Alex. You faced your past, your guilt, and in doing so, you broke his hold." Embracing my long-lost friend, the weight of years of guilt and grief lifted. The bond between us, once strained, was now stronger than ever. The park, once a place of darkness and fear, was now a beacon of hope and redemption. The Slender Man was banished, but the lesson was clear. Only by confronting our deepest fears, our past, and seeking reconciliation can we truly find peace.